culture plays a significant role in hampering the socio-economic progress of the Pacific people in New Zealand?
I think the mainstream community and the greater New Zealand society are now seeing a glimpse of the potentials of the Pacific peoples in New Zealand. And if given time and enough support and goodwill, I think they will continue, to manifest their talents and hence contribute in a very positive way. One of the highlights during the year for Pacific Island Baha'is is the Fono, which takes place every Labor weekend, where we come together, and we celebrate our diversity, arts, music, dance, and whatnot.
Hello and welcome to Baha'i on Air. I'm Guy Sinclair. Today we'll be talking with Sione Tu'itahi. Sione, welcome to Baha'i on Air.
Thank you, Guy, and it's nice to be here.
Sione, you're from Tonga originally. Tell us, how did you come to New Zealand?
I came to New Zealand 6 years ago. It was literally by accident. I had an accident in Tonga, and it wasn't treated well there, so I had to be flown over here to New Zealand. I came along with my family as well, and because of medical requirements, I had to stay on. And 6 years on, we are still here, and our family roots have grown here, so that we are now staying here in New Zealand and working here.
Could you tell us how you started in journalism and what led you to that choice of career?
Yes, I've been in the journalism field for some 20 years in Tonga, working full-time as a print journalist, working in one of the newspapers there, and at the same time doing part-time work for one of the radios there. Originally, I started my career as a broadcaster, a newsreader, some 30 years ago, right after high school, and then I switched to print journalism because I love writing. And later on after that, some few years after, I went to England and later to the States for further studies in my field. Through my work, I traveled a lot throughout the Pacific. In Samoa, I visited the Baha'i temple, house of worship in Samoa. And of course, as you know, Guy, the head of state of Samoa, the Malietoa, Tanumafili II is a Baha'i. I met very interesting people. I covered very sensitive, challenging issues in many parts of the world that I've been to. And being a Baha'i made it more interesting, but challenging as well.
Sione, you mentioned the Baha'i house of worship in Apia in Samoa. I've actually visited that house of worship, and my parents live outside Apia, quite near to that Baha'i temple. Could you tell us about more about these temples or these houses of worship around the world?
Yes, there are 7 houses of worship for the Baha'i faith in the world right now. And the house of worship in Samoa, it's called the Mother Temple for the Pacific Islands. And it's located up in the beautiful hills of, outskirts of Apia in Western Samoa, in Upolu, the main island.
I'm further moved to express our gratitude to the supreme body of Baha'i faith, the Universal House of Justice, for choosing Western Samoa to be the recipient of such a gift. My sincere and warmest expression of thanks goes to the members of the Baha'i faith.
It was dedicated in 1984 by His Highness the Malietoa, Tanumafili II,
who have given so generously of their resources.
Reared in the heart of Polynesia, in this lovely island of Samoa,
together with one of the prominent leaders of the Baha'i faith, Amatul Baha'i Kanun. The general features of the Baha'i house of worship is very similar to all the other 6 houses of worship. That is, it has 9 doors with inscriptions of holy writings from the 9 known existing major religions in the world, and that is Buddhism, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and Hinduism, and Islam as well, and Christianity, of course, and the Baha'i faith. And the doors are open for all peoples of the world, regardless of your creed, your nationality, color, race, or ethnic background. and you can go there and worship, the one God that we all believe in as you wish. It's open for everybody. The actual meaning of the name of these houses of worship means the dawning place of the mention of God, words to that effect. And it's a lovely place. And as I mentioned, my travels as a journalist gave me the bounty of visiting these houses of worship. The dedication in Samoa, of course, was a beautiful, elaborate mixture of both spiritual and cultural, elements. The most high quality positive elements of Pacific Island cultures. The Pacific region itself is a growth area for the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i faith, of course, is one of the major world religions, the latest but not the last, of course. And most of these Baha'i communities in all the Pacific Islands are growing very fast. And from what my information is that many of them has got a Baha'i population of more than 1% of the total population of each Pacific Island nations. But if you might recall the history of Christianity, the Pacific region is the last frontier for Christianity to spread into. And one of the prophecies of Christ that when my gospel is spread to all nations, and that's when my second coming will be. So to Baha'is, it is significant in that sense as well. There's also a link, a spiritual link between Christianity and Baha'i in terms of in the Pacific. The Pacific people were the last to know of revealed religions through Christianity, but we are ahead in terms of finding out about the new religion of God.
What do you think it is about the Baha'i teachings in particular which attract the peoples of the Pacific?
It's unifying principle, bringing people from various backgrounds together. Unity in diversity is one of the watchwords, if not the watchword of the Baha'i faith. And it brings in all these various people from different cultural backgrounds. And the Baha'i faith allows these various cultural groups to practice, their culture, their values and their practices that are actually conducive to their health and total well-being, and also to educate them in a way to realize and perhaps phase away some of the cultural practices that are not conducive to their total, well-being. And of course, the Baha'i faith also explains very clearly the relationship between the Baha'i faith and the other major religions of God. And the majority of the Pacific Island peoples, are from Christian background. And when one studies the Baha'i faith closely, you see the logical link in all the religions of God, including Christianity and the Baha'i faith. And in fact, you find more about not only religion itself, but also Christ, as the prophet founder of Christianity. It makes more sense. You still see that mystical, spiritual connection and relationship between you as a human and as a soul, between you and your Creator God, through the teachings of Baha'i faith, which Christianity gave, in the first place to peoples of the Pacific.
Friends, you are all familiar with the Response message of the Universal House of Justice, Response 1999, where it points out to the significance of this juncture of the evolution and the development of humanity. This time, this very important time, will never ever be repeated in the whole history of mankind. Manifold blessings are upon us if and only if we do just one thing, to take one step towards God and Baha'u'llah. And Baha'u'llah and God will do the rest for us.
And how did you come to find out about the Baha'i faith?
It was back in my school days in Tonga. Some of my friends were Baha'is then, and they invited me over to some firesides.
Is there a substantial Baha'i community in Tonga then?
There is. In Tonga right now, there's something like 3,000 plus Baha'is in Tonga, and they are scattered throughout the 46 inhabited islands of Tonga. There are something like 170 islands in Tonga, 46 of which are inhabited, and there are Baha'is in all these islands.
On all of those islands?
That's right.
And you say you were taken to firesides. Can you tell us a bit more about what these firesides are?
Fireside is a gathering at a home of a Baha'i where you are welcome, a great hospitality, and also there's a speaker, sometimes very informal, where, principles of the faith, of the Baha'i faith are discussed, and visitors are invited to come along. I could not resist the sheer logic of the Baha'i faith as opposed to my previous, faith. In a small place like Tonga, it's not easy to leave one's traditional belief and to take up a new one, join a new one. Especially for me, coming from a family where I am a fifth generation, and all those 5 generations there have been ministers serving the biggest church in Tonga, the Methodist church. So it's quite a big thing for me to move. But the global nature, the inclusiveness of the Baha'i faith, encompassing all the major religions of the world, which I have read about in my studies, not only in my formal education, but also in my own personal investigation. And because of all that, and also because it still maintains the Baha'i faith, still gives to me that mystical, spiritual relationship with God that I found originally in my brand of Christianity. I was convinced that I, should join, and since then, I'm a Baha'i.
How did your family react to you becoming a Baha'i?
Initially, it was a sad thing between them and me because of, in a small community like Tonga, it's hard to leave your extended family. But they see the transformation, the personal change in my life, and also my ability to focus on my career, and also to turn up a new leaf in a positive way. And they saw the change, and finally, after some years, my parents gave me the blessings, that I continue to pursue my spiritual new pathway that I found.
It must have been very difficult in the meantime.
Yes, it was very difficult in the meantime, but one has to make a stand when it comes to, your spiritual quest. At the end of the day, it's just between yourself and God, to work out that spiritual relationship. And that's how I saw it, and that's how I understood it.
What are the challenges for Pacific Islanders in general settling in New Zealand?
I think Pacific Islanders in New Zealand, like any other migrant group to New Zealand, or for that matter, to any new environment, there are lots of challenges. New system that you have to learn, new climate, new culture. And for the Pacific Islanders, it's especially challenging. Because there's a big mismatch between the cultural values of the mainstream culture here in New Zealand and the cultures that the Pacific Islanders, have just left behind them. But also there's a gap between the socio-economic standards of these two groups. The Pacific Island community in New Zealand are very much a minority group because of the mismatch of the culture and our socioeconomic status being lower. As you know, the Pacific Island community in New Zealand is at the lowest of the socioeconomic ladder. But having said that, it's interesting to view the same situation from a different angle. From a Pacific Islander point of view, we have achieved in the sense that we have left one culture behind and we move on to a new environment, and we are achieving to some extent. Although the statistics are very much negative, there are pockets of success, within the Pacific Island community. If you look at the area of sports, for example, there are outstanding sportsmen and women, rugby, for example. If you look into arts, for example, the Pacific Islanders are actually achieving right at the very top level. And I think the mainstream community and the greater New Zealand society are now seeing a glimpse of the potentials of the Pacific peoples in New Zealand. And if given time and enough support and goodwill, I think they will continue, to manifest their talents and hence contribute in a very positive way, and that's for the enrichment of the New Zealand society as a whole. And I know in also in the Pacific Baha'i community in New Zealand, especially in Auckland, we are doing our part to contribute, to the progress of the greater New Zealand society.
Sione, you mentioned the Pacific Island Baha'i community in New Zealand. Perhaps you could tell us some more about the programs and activities of that community.
Yes, I think first of all, there are the number of Pacific Island Baha'is in New Zealand. There are several hundreds of us here in New Zealand, and there are all sorts of programs and activities for us. First, we are part of the program for all Baha'is in New Zealand, regardless of your ethnic, cultural background, but also to cater for the specific cultural needs of Pacific Island Baha'is. There are programs for us as well.
The Baha'i faith forbids violence, full stop, in any form of abuse, mental, verbal, physical, sexual, and so forth.
Le achievement la le ya kan kwainga le human resource la le Bahai.
There are workshops, regular workshops, seminars, training sessions, and so on and so forth, to cater for specific needs from parenting, youth activities, health, employment issues, and some of the challenges that we face when we, migrate to this new environment, to this new culture. Throughout the year, there are all sorts of programs.
The following short prayer is for Hiri Moane, our dear friend, who tragically lost his life 1 year ago this month while serving the faith. O my God, the God of bounty and mercy, Thou art that King by whose commanding word the whole creation hath been formed into being.
Yeah.
one of the highlights during the year for Pacific Island Baha'is is the Fono, which takes place every Labor weekend, where we come together for the whole weekend, and we celebrate our diversity. We exchange our, cultural arts, music, dance, and whatnot. And also at the same time, we study the spiritual teachings and the socio-economic teachings of the Baha'i faith that help us to progress economically as well as spiritually as well.
What role do you think the Baha'i community plays in helping to integrate the Pacific Island Baha'is into the New Zealand Baha'i community?
I think to start with, it's the principles, the teachings of the Baha'i faith. It is very inclusive, it is very universal and global, and it allows anyone from any ethnic, cultural background to feel very comfortable in joining and participating. Teachings like the oneness of mankind, unity in diversity, and the minority groups giving a special acknowledgement in the administration of the Baha'i faith. And right from the individual, family, and local level up to the national level, the administration of the Baha'i faith allows Pacific Island Baha'is to participate and to take part. For example, we can put forth our recommendations through the regular get-together of the Baha'is, that is the 19-day feast, for example. We are eligible to be members of the local administrative body, that is the local spiritual assembly. We are eligible as well to be members of the national administrative body of the Baha'i faith, that is the National Spiritual Assembly. What matters is that you have the spiritual, criteria. It doesn't matter what color of your skin that you have. What matters is the color of your heart and your mind. On top of that national structure, which is similar to any Baha'i community in the world you go to, the minority groups have special acknowledgement of the Baha'i faith, and that makes it, the minority groups who are Baha'is, joining the Baha'i faith, feel very comfortable, very welcoming. And as I mentioned earlier, the Baha'i writings is very clear in supporting those cultural aspects that enhances one's total, welfare and well-being, and at the same time, it educates you to face away teachings that are not enhancing your total well-being as a human being. For example, in the Pacific, one of the issues that we are facing right now I'm talking about the wider Pacific Island community in New Zealand, physical disciplines and physical violence is one of the big issues for the Pacific Island community. The Baha'i faith makes it very clear that no form of abuse or violence is allowed, and that helps us as Pacific Island Baha'is to know exactly where to stand and what to do.
What about the particular contributions that the Pacific Island Baha'i community make to the Baha'i community in New Zealand?
Yes, we bring into the Baha'i community of New Zealand our arts, our dance, our music, and our songs, and our poetry, and our writing as well. And there are forums and there are events where we all contribute, just like any cultural group. We all contribute, and that it helps the diversity and the beauty, of any event where these various, diverse groups come together. We also contribute to the Baha'i community through our participating and contribution through the administration and the various activities of the Baha'i faith. I know off the top of my head that there are a number of Pacific Island Baha'is who are members of the local administrative bodies of the Baha'i faith throughout New Zealand. That is the local spiritual assembly. In any locality where there are 9 adult Baha'is, they can come together and form that administrative body. And Pacific Island Baha'is are actively participating in that. which means it has a significant, great significance for us as Pacific Island Baha'is, because we are allowed right away when we join the New Zealand community to participate in the decision-making process right at the local level and up to the national level. That is something that is slow in coming in the Pacific Island community in general. Participating in the decision-making and determining one's destiny, and that is very empowering for Pacific Island Baha'is who are coming here to New Zealand. In other words, you are accepted regardless of your socioeconomic status. Your color doesn't matter. It's your heart, it is your spiritual well-being that really matters. We also contribute in the area of education. Our Pacific Island Affairs Committee, runs regular programs throughout the year on the local and the national level. Educational programs to do with socio-economic development, enhancing the status of women, the life of the family. And I think in the area of women, because of the principle of the Baha'i faith, the equality of men and women, we are advancing because of the status of women as the first teacher of every generation.
Well, we wish you well with all your activities and services in the future, and thank you very much for joining us today on Baha'i On Air.
Mahalo with the Guy, and it was a bounty to be here. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today on Baha'i On Air. We look forward to seeing you again next time.